Welcome to the Insight session this morning. We have one of the senior leaders with us, Mr. Rajesh Ojha from PwC India, who is a leader in his own right in many different aspects of technology and now consulting with the large companies across the world on technology transformation. And today we are going to be focusing our talk more on the manufacturing side of things. So before we get into the details, Rajesh, can you please help us with some of the key areas that you focus on, just to kind of set the context on the type of things, because you have a global view of things, having spent so many years in the industry and now sitting in a key position at PwC. So please give us a small overview of the things that you're covering.
Thanks, Sanjeev. First of all, thank you so much for taking time out and doing this discussion with me. So as you introduced, I have been now in this industry for last 28 years, and since the topic is of interest from a manufacturing perspective, so giving little context, uh, I take care of GCCs as a market segment for PwC in my role. And when I say GCCs, it's largely the experience that I have been having myself for last 17 years working with the global companies in various roles. And to your point, when you mentioned that what are the areas that I've been focusing upon? I mean, my course started from aerospace and defense, and aerospace and defense still remains somewhere in my blood, but more from a design engineering side. And then I've spent a lot of time in automotive, in manufacturing side, discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing. A lot towards semiconductor, less on manufacturing, more on the design side. And then later part of it has been more enabling companies, global companies coming into India, helping their growth, helping them set up. And now I would say that's my full-time job of working closely with the clients which are coming in, not just the global MNCs but also the Indian MNCs who are looking to set up their GCCs and trying to take advantage of let's say what is best available today in our country.
Wonderful. So with this varied and strong background in different sectors, and these days, technology is one thing that is common to pretty much every sector, right? And one area where we hear that, manufacturing is one area where we believe there's going to be a lot of impact, but there is still a lot of work to be done on it. That is what I hear from the circle that I move in. Of course, the type of industries, the scale of industries vary a lot from small, medium size to very large companies. Even though some of them are little ahead in the curve, but a lot of them are still have a lot of catching up to do. Give us a broad overview of that. GCC, of course, do a better job of it. They are little more, I would say, proactive in their approach, but that could be just a thing that we see, from outside. But what would be your inside view of things, and some of the Indian MNCs also, give us a broad perspective on that.
No, absolutely, Sanjeev. So when you look at it, especially from a manufacturing perspective and how uh, first the global MNC angle to it, right? It has been for a while. I mean, if I go back, I mean, we have started seeing some of the global MNCs not necessarily coming as GCC as a concept, but started somewhere in late 70s, early 70s, right? But purely that time, the objective was for them to create and take advantage of India as an emerging market in some form. But in the truest sense, it was post the liberalization, which we call post 1991, is where we started seeing some of these global MNCs looking at, because of all the, I would say, the foreign FDIs coming in, a lot of these, say free trade agreements, etc. Now, those have enabled a lot of companies to look at India like places where you have ability, where you have space, where you have all the right, I would say, government support, people, etc. So companies have been now coming in more, starting from the semiconductor that we early days we saw, or the high tech companies were the first one. But where actually it has turned around is primarily, and I will take some examples so that I can relate to it. When you look at the likes of Boeing and Airbus, right? While these are very high, I would say, known companies which has been looking at design as support from India, but over last, I would say, few years, some of the manufacturing of their components have started happening in India. So if you look at the journey, right, from their perspective, where it started in late 90s and early 2000s, setting up some of the offshore development centers with some of the GSIs, and initiating some of the engineering services by 2007, 2010, setting up their own GCCs in form from engineering services. But today, when you look at these companies, some of them starting their manufacturing as well with partnership with Indian companies, basically just tells you the storyline that this is how India has evolved, this is how the capabilities has evolved. And if somebody would have told me this in late 90s that we will be doing a manufacturing for Boeing or for Airbus or similar kind, maybe if it's a part manufacturing also, I would say it would have not been taken the way it is. But today, when you look at a C295 program, right, which is one of the marquee ones, which is happening in India, along with the local, availability, and this is a global company collaborating with India and trying to do it. Similarly, when you look at from an automotive landscape side, it's very similar. You would see a lot of German companies, a lot of Japanese companies, some of the South Korean companies, and all they have set up their shops. Initially, it was again largely focusing on design support, more on CAD CAM CA analysis side. But over a period with the emerging technology, emerging knowledge, and the local Indian manufacturing setups, especially local Indian automotive companies have been taken over. So this is where you see the change happening, and almost all the new product that's launched for these global companies, almost 70-80% contribution is coming from the GCCs in India. So somewhere now it is going hand in hand. If you look at newer areas, for example, EVs or the new batteries, when you're looking at it, and how the whole IoT or digital twin and all the newer technology that is coming in space, especially in context of manufacturing and engineering, you would see the specialization that lies in India today is enabling those companies to launch those products that design from India. So this is how I clearly see the evolution. This is how clearly see that how enablement in terms of or evolution in terms of knowledge, and then knowledge supported by experience. And today there are certain products which is end to end being managed product produced in India. So this is a big shift, Sanjeev.
No, great. You're right. I think when we are, at least in Bangalore, when we're driving to airport, we do see companies like Boeing and Airbus and some of the defense companies like Collins and so on, on the way. It is really heartening to see, and this was very difficult to imagine, a decade or two ago, as you mentioned. So what has prompted that change? Because a lot of things come into this manufacturing, right? I mean, there are government policies, there are labor laws, there are infrastructure, talent availability, and so on. So what has prompted this, that change in the last couple of years? And where do you see some of the gaps that still exist to get to the next level? And then, of course, there is the element of technology, which we'll talk about subsequently. That element also exists. So just if we say that what got us till now and what will get us to the next level.
Thanks, Sanjeev. So when you look at it, what has got us till now, I think, and I personally am an example, right? So I started my experience on design engineering from one of the DRDO labs, right? And I always say that, especially in Bangalore's context and aerospace context, or even any of the design work today, if you look at most of the GCCs, which were set up as a design house in late 90s and early 2000, 70% of the workforce were coming on who were trained by these defense labs. Because, and that's the truth. When you look at what Aeronautical Development Agency did, what HAL did, what NAL did, what DRDO labs did at that time, was the incubation of talent knowingly and unknowingly, because these were the engineers who were trained on the real stuff, and the design principles were given beyond that the engineering education that these most of us had got then. But what enabled after that was the experience working both locally and globally, understanding what is the demand. And in 20 years, what has changed is somebody who was just looking at understanding the product design and its work, the way it works, the way it happens, into how the product works. And I'll tell you, when in early, I would say not early 2000, but late 2000, when companies started thinking about some of these manufacturing or design, end-to-end design, concept designs in India, and that is when the incubation started, primarily also from the experienced people. So a lot of people who retired from likes of HAL, who retired from some of the global companies, came to India back. They became the hand holding partners for many of these companies to enable that growth. So what enabled was almost like an ecosystem playing together, obviously with all the right government policies in between, whether it was in form of transfer of technology, whether it was in form of offsets from aerospace and defense, or it was in form of some semiconductor perspective or other areas, that how the evolution happened in terms of the support. Clearly, from a process supporter or a product service provider, you started owning the product ownership in some form. And today, after 20 years, the experience has come to the scale where the person understands the technology, understands the whole product life cycle, understands the supply chain, and then you also understand the enabling world, what is making it faster to market. So what the tools like the PLM tools that has come in and which has already evolved, the whole digital twin, the whole model based design engineering which has come in. So all those things has already evolved, which is enabling India to say now we can take this whole product into one place, and which was earlier purely built to print, right? Now you are doing design, build, and print. That means you are able to design, you are able to build, and then you are able to basically manufacture it. So this is how the knowledge or the experience has changed, and this is why you would see a lot of aerospace, whether it is the large companies which are under the conglomerates like Tatas or L&Ts and others, or the Dynamatics of the world, or when you look at some of the MSME sectors where you see a lot of manufacturing happening, order books of it, and obviously the likes of ISRO's, which created an incubation center, which created those enablement on the other side of the world, where you this is more of a what has brought us here. But what is going to take us to the next step is clearly that everybody is now looking at the newer technology, the emerging technologies. And emerging technologies means that you have less human intervention, more of the tools and technologies. Obviously, some of these world which is more critical, human cannot be avoided. But in most cases where there's a possibility of emerging technologies coming in and taking you forward, I think India still has that advantage. One, in terms of the number of people who are adaptable to change to these new technologies. Two is, when you look at the market landscape and look at launching something new, you would find that India becomes the eventual place now, because the talent availability, but also as the market. Because today, we being $4 trillion going towards $7 trillion, effectively any industry that you talk about is becoming a market in Indian context, and it is for all type of market. Whether you are taking economy side, that means on the luxury side or the economical side, you would find buyers in all segments. So hence you would find almost every product being launched in India, and the product is being designed in India primarily because it needs to be cost effective. So there is a east to east model that you're creating for first for the local market, and because it's a developing and a growing country, you will see that a lot of emerging countries, which are developing countries, are able to really take it forward. So a lot of what you see the export happening of EV vehicles, two wheelers, four wheelers, which are being designed, manufactured in India to the Africa or to not other countries, is primarily the way it is moving. So this is where the evolution is going to take us. The emerging technologies will be our driver, and somewhere the GCCs are going to play the big role. And when I say this, maybe what we talk about four phases of the growth of GCC, the fifth phase is going to happen is where GCCs are going to create manufacturing centers next to them. So far it was manufacturing centers where R&D centers was created next to them, but it is about the time which is coming where GCCs, because they are here, because the R&D enablement is there, engineering is happening, they are going to enable manufacturing hubs next to them.
Well, that's good to hear. And you're saying, it's basically all factors playing into the growth of it, be it on the government policy side and be it in the market growth in India, and of course talent development and overall Indian ecosystem growing in space. And when you see aeronautical things, they are a little bit on the higher end of the manufacturing ecosystem, I would say. And you also mentioned about emerging technologies playing a key role in it, right? And how do you see, and India has definitely become a digital force to reckon with, right? We may not be the leaders, but we are not, but we have a lot of good things going here, which draw a lot of attention from rest of the world. And we have some of the solutions and products coming out of here, which not only in public service, but also coming in the industry side of things as well. So what's your take on it and the role technology will play eventually, and where do we stand with regard to influencing manufacturing, in the country, the role of technology. Give us some broad perspective on that, please.
So let me take some examples, Sanjeev, so that we can relate to it. So oil and gas industry I'm taking, which is not my core, but I have worked on one or two such programs earlier and consulted on. So one of the things when you look at it, when a oil or gas gets movement from one location to other, you manage the whole seeing that where it is leaking, transition loss is happening. And when you look at the sensors that is being applied remotely, the drone is being applied, and how you're managing it. Similarly, when you look at all these discrete manufacturing where sometimes it is touchless, with the robots coming in picture, because you just need that at the scale the way it is happening. When you look at some of these high-end manufacturing, precision manufacturing areas, right? While we had always titans of the world in India, which were doing extreme high-end precision manufacturing, HMTs and the ITIs, but when you look at it, the way you see iPhone getting manufactured in India, or the iPad recently, yesterday or today, I heard that iPad also will be manufactured in India. So this just basically tells that the technology evolution, what is happening across the world, has already reached out in India. Otherwise, this manufacturing would not have started. So there is a knowledge receiver here who is able to take or understand, take those technology into their execution phase, and is now qualified to do that. So this is one way of looking at how these emerging technologies is enabling that. Second is when you're looking at it from the overall picture, right? From a larger manufacturing, whether it is about, and again, I'm just bringing in the various tools which is coming, whether it is coming from, let's say, Dassault House or a Siemens PLM house, or when you're looking at it purely on the manufacturing side, the MES world, the manufacturing execution engineering services side, you would see that India is taking the lead there, and with number of PhDs, which was one of the needs. So if I'll go back, when we were trying to look for people with aerospace, we didn't get many people earlier in early 2000. So we used to go to all the IITs where the MTech programs were running. We used to go, do joint programs, collaborations with them, create curriculums and drive it and do that then. But today, what you're looking at is a lot of global people, are people based out of India who have taken global, education out there, and are bringing those emerging technologies into this space. And this is again changing the whole landscape from the newer technology, newer world area. If you look at end-to-end view, emerging technologies is the driver, but your industry knowledge, your knowledge of the which is being brought by various companies which is coming in today. So whether now I talked about aerospace and oil and gas. Let me talk about the automotive. Let me talk about some of these equipment manufacturing companies which are doing it now. Most of them earlier were seen as purely that the design was happening. Let's say diesel engine design, a man BMW. They just wanted to do their design work here. But look at now, most of the design, the end-to-end work which is happening, whether it is for the likes of Bombardier, the Alstoms of the world, and which is into these metro trains or the enabling areas, you would see almost everything is looking at India from their design perspective. And this is where almost to the line of manufacturing, where you start manufacturing till there you are doing it, and then you're eventually getting into the plant. So the whole journey is being seen, virtually managed and driven, from the houses, especially from the GCCs and also the Indian, service providers.
Wonderful. Good to know that technology-wise things are looking good at this point. And of course, there is no end to technology. You have to continue to grow to remain in sync with the rest of the world, or rather be ahead also in some areas. Let me ask the last question, a 2-minute thing, since we are running out of time, on sustainability, right? Which is another important topic. And especially pretty high on the list of manufacturing companies. Where do we stand in India with regard to the practices on sustainability? How would you rate the companies in India, the GCCs and other companies? So just a 2-minute overview, given that we have limited time.
I think sustainability is core to all the new development, right? That is need of the hour. And if you especially look at it, GCCs are taking the lead. So what I say that GCCs are taking the lead effectively in all the industry side. So ESG or the sustainability was earlier just a buzzword, but today when you look at it in terms of design phase itself, the whole design phase is done with one of the levers or one of the parameters is ESG. That means if your ESG part is not taken care, your design is not getting approved. And this is across, if you look at manufacturing, since we are talking on the manufacturing topic, today the whole 3D printing that we're talking about, the whole design phase where you're not anymore going into creating prototypes of, using a wood or a wax or things like that, but you're doing virtual prototyping with digital twin, with various new technologies coming in. You're directly getting into manufacturing. So your enablement there obviously is part of that ESG initiative. Plus, when you look at companies in India specifically, there are multiple startups, right, which has a massive focus on this, where most of the global companies which are operating have tied up with them, and seeing that the newer technologies as they get developed, sustainability is part of that, is core to that. So sustainability at this moment is no more a choice. It is a must that we are seeing it in the whole design phase. And this is being followed letter in letter and spirit, I would say that way. And it is being measured. So today, when you look at measurement also, whether it is a carbon footprint or decarbonization and things like that, this is now part and participle in everything. So today, if you design something and you look at what is the server, what is the amount of energy it is going to use, and when you do some simulations, how light, how heavy the files are that is churning. So you are looking into all those aspects and looking into it when you're designing things. So this is not just left to people, but it is at the stage on the left side where the earlier we were more focused on the what you call design for manufacturing, design for assembly, design for and maintenance. Now design for sustainability is the new phenomena, without which your design is incomplete.
Right. I know, good to know and hear your mind and from your experience. It was a pleasure talking to you, Rajesh. Um, and I know much of your time gets consumed working with GCCs, but if we get a chance, we'll definitely want to take some of your expertise to some of the smaller mid-sized companies who may also be looking for some guidance, and we do work with a lot of them. So I'll use another opportunity to call you into another forum for smaller mid-sized companies as well. And it's a pleasure to hear that the rise of manufacturing by the GCCs here, and hope we see the trend continuing and the technology aiding that. Look forward to continuing our conversation in another forum. Rajesh, thank you so much for joining this morning.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. I'm really looking forward to.